Hi, my name is Joseph Alai. Welcome to my channel. And today I want to do something a little bit different. And I want to talk about the question, are you stuck in the state? Are you stuck? Are you preventing yourself from getting your manifestations? Are you kind of in a rut? And how do we get out of that rut if you're in that rut, right? And so that's what I want to talk about. And so you may notice that I have this whiteboard here, which is a little bit different. I've only released, I believe, one video using a whiteboard. And I think it's important because for me, naturally, my natural way of teaching is actually through this mechanism called a whiteboard. And so I hope that you'll like this. I'm going to do a few videos like this and we'll see how it turns out, right? We'll do some segmented testing, just like I always talk about. But anyway, back to this, right? So state stuck. What is that term? Well, I just made it up. But what it means is essentially to be caught in this a state continuously, right? And what's a state? A state is essentially a state of mind or a state of being, right? It could be either of those. A state of mind meaning what is continuously being manifested outward, or a state of being is kind of a similar way to phrase that. And I want to go into a little bit of details. What are some symptoms of being state stuck? And what is the feedback loop system, which I've talked about before in a different video way back when I first started, which is one of the most important fundamentals of manifesting. Whereas if you can understand this and then apply it, you have the answer for any of the questions that you could possibly have and the solution to this. So I gave myself a few hints here, right? I've mapped this out beforehand. Let's see if you're state stuck. Let's see if we can figure out what this feedback loop system is and if we can figure out how to apply this to find a solution. So first and foremost, the symptoms, right? So what are some of the symptoms for being state stuck, right? So recently, about a month ago, or a little bit over a month ago, I started getting some strange things happening to me as far as manifestations are concerned. Some of my imaginal acts were taking longer to manifest. And for me, I generally have a really good idea of how long something should take to manifest, depending on the complexity, or if something's wrong, or how I feel. I have a really good understanding of this because with manifestation, what we're doing regularly is taking kind of snapshots or looking at our thoughts, the way that we feel, what we are imagining, and etc. And so what I was finding was that I was having a dip in my manifestations unfolding. Now, what is a dip? What do I even mean here? So when I wrote down here manifestation stuck, what I mean is like, perhaps I saw an initial sign after I've imagined, but then after that, nothing had come, or that it was kind of slow, or things were manifesting very slow. Now, simple things, fast things, things with little complexity were happening rapidly regardless, but my desires, such as target income, exercise routines, breaking from not exercise, going into exercising, waking up early, right? Opposed to having my the hours that I used to be awake, which was I would wake up at noon and go to bed at 3 and then kind of work and have fun and hang out with people all that time in between. So anyway, you can manifest all of these things, right? Income is a tangible thing. You can literally imagine that you receive a bunch of money and manifest it. Whereas some more ambiguous things would be like exercising or waking up early. And I think that oftentimes those are disregarded as far as manifestation is concerned, but it's really important to understand that all things, including how we act, what we do, how we feel when we wake up, how much money we make, how people are treating us, all of that is dictated by our manifestation. So for me, what I was encountering was my bigger manifestations were stuck. And here's the second symptom that you can ask yourself, right? Habits, routines are monotonous. And so what do I mean by that? So have you ever kind of been doing the same thing over and over again and you essentially feel like it's a cycle, like it's hard to break out, like it's a habit, you've developed a habit, right? Because here's the thing, routine is good. And in fact, regardless of if we want to or not, our natural tendencies as human beings are to start creating patterns and habits, right? Everything in the world essentially has patterns and habits. I mean, the sun rises and sets every single day, 365 days approximately a year. Everything kind of goes through pattern, and we are no different. But what I was realizing that I was doing is I had some really big changes this year. If you've been following me, you know I was able to quit my job, go into business for myself, move into a place that was bigger that would allow me to have an office for myself. But once everything settled, once the dust settled, I realized that my routine was the same thing over and over again. And it started to feel like it was a habit, like it was like an unbreakable habit almost, right? And then the final thing is like a lull. Now, generally this lull is related to these things right here, like monotony, routines over and over again, manifestations stuck, perhaps your desires are kind of fading. These are some of the symptoms to look out for when you are considering or wondering if you are state stuck. And I think in order to answer the question of what's the solution to this, we've got to look at the feedback loop system, right? So this is something I've talked about. It's something that over the past 10 years and watching thousands, and I'm talking about tens of thousands of manifestations unfold, not only for myself, personally tens of thousands, but then everyone else finally, once the YouTube channel came, once I started receiving emails, once I started doing coaching, my ability to kind of perceive what's happening and what kind of system is behind what is happening is kind of what I take pride in, right? So one of the benefits of having done this for so long is that since the beginning, I was very fortunate to have someone tell me that I should keep track of everything that I did. And so I did. And so upon analysis of the past and looking backward, right, hindsight is 2020, you can kind of come up with these not only speculations, but as it turns out to be quote unquote laws of how manifestation works. And so the feedback loop system essentially goes as follows, right? These are generalizations, but this is how you will find your reality has been crafted, handcrafted perfectly, not handcrafted, but human crafted, or I'll stop talking. Feedback loop system. Number one, perception, right? So what do I mean by perception? Let's see if I can spell all this right while talking, if I can write and talk at the same time. Well, anyway, perception. So the external world that we exist within, we perceive it or we experience it, right? So another term that this can be interchanged with is experience. So when I'm having a conversation, this is just an example. If I'm having a conversation with a friend, I am experiencing whatever I am perceiving. So it doesn't even really matter if I'm in a very large environment with a lot of people. I'm talking to you right now, and so you are the person that I'm perceiving. And not only that, I am perceiving what you're saying to me as well. I'm perceiving perhaps what you're wearing right now, what your mannerisms are, what your emotional reactions are. And not only that, the same goes for me. How I'm feeling, how I'm reacting, what I'm thinking that you're thinking that I'm thinking, right? Well, either way, so the perception is essentially anything that goes into our awareness. It's the external going internal, but we don't get the exact snapshot. And this is a very critical distinction here. We do not pick up the identical snapshot from the external world and that goes internal. No. Our perception essentially paints what we're seeing. So for instance, if a very extreme obvious example is if you are furious, you are in a terrible, awful mood, you just stepped on a Lego or you just stubbed your toe and and something bad just happened, right? You spilt your milk or your coffee and you're not doing well. And so you see someone who you maybe haven't seen in a long time, right? You just accidentally bump into them at that exact moment. You In any other circumstance, you would have been extremely happy to see this old friend, but because of these different things that have happened to you, you stubbed your toe, you stepped on a Lego, you spilt your milk or your coffee or both at the same time, or whatever else I just made up, your experience is going to be painted by how you feel or what you have just experienced. And so from there, that is essentially that combination of not only the external world, but how you feel, what you're thinking, what you're experiencing beforehand, gets impressed upon the subconscious mind, right? Impression. So what does that mean? Now, all throughout the day, we're essentially having our subconscious mind impressed on and off, right, to different levels. It's not 100% directly from the external world into the subconscious mind. The gatekeeper is the conscious mind. So essentially, if we don't want to experience something, the conscious mind protects the subconscious mind from negative stuff coming in. Now, if we talk bad about ourselves all the time in our own mind, then that's too bad, because we are deliberately pushing things with the conscious mind and feeding it to the subconscious mind. This is how we begin to manifest negativities in our life, right? Negative self-talk, or allowing our perception when we see something to paint that experience negatively. So the best case scenario is, beside our perception, if we had a neutral perception or we were always in a good mood for some reason, whatever we saw could be essentially go straight into the subconscious mind. If it did, then if we experience positive things, then that would be the best bet to experience again positive things, right? So I know that sounds a little complicated, so we'll just jump right into the next step. After we impress the subconscious mind with the combination of our perception and the external world, which still is all just one perception, we impress the subconscious mind, and that manifests into the environment. That manifests into the environment. And so here's the thing. Once we get to this level comes up back and impresses back into our perception. So our perceptions then goes to our impression of the subconscious mind, and then that goes to manifest again. So essentially, it's a cycle that goes on and on and on and on. And the only thing that we have control of as it relates to the external world is our imagination or our perception, right? So our awareness is a broad term for everything that's taking place inside of our consciousness. So the more control we have over our consciousness, the more we can intervene at this intermediary level right here between between the external world and our subconscious, which is the perception. If we can, and this is essentially imagination. So what does this mean? So essentially, the external world, when it continuously impresses on the subconscious, it manifests outward again. And so we're talking about being state stuck here. So what does this mean? When we continuously experience the same thing over and over and over again, right? If our manifestations are stuck, if we're seeing routines and it's monotonous, or we feel like we're in a lull, right? This is the only cause of our experience right here. This is the cause of our experience. There's no other cause to our experience. So that means that everything that we've ever encountered in our life has come through this process. When we experience positive things or negative things before we knew how to manifest, it was just kind of sheer luck that we allowed something positive to impress with our positive perception, and then it pushed out positively. But we have the possibility to maintain control. We have the possibility to regain control. We need to bust out of being state stuck. So the solution, we can start to manifest again. We can start to get a bunch of manifestations at the same time. So I had a couple conversations with people recently. All of us after the new year had begun to experience a tremendous shift in our lives, in our manifestation life, right? So for me, I was stuck in this regard, right? But what I ended up doing was, one of the I decided to take action based on this and this formula, which is proven over and over and over again. If we can utilize this and push this over here, then, well, we can essentially manifest anything that we want. So the solution is as follows. To essentially use the feedback system to fix these symptoms, to kind of allow the manifestations to begin to flow again, the 3 pieces of the solution are, and I'll explain them. Number 1 is to imagine. Why? I bet you guessed that. Imagine. That's beautifully written. Wow, I am so good at writing from an angle. Imagine. So here's the thing, right? As I said here, our imagination is the only key which can allow us to change that experience that we keep experiencing over and over. We begin to essentially, this turns into handcuffs, right? This is supposed to be handcuffs right here. And that's the chain, there's the teeth to the handcuffs. Don't ask me how I know in such detail what handcuffs look like. It's just really, yeah. Anyway, so this cycle turns into handcuffs, man. We get locked in, and this is something that happened to me and has happened to me time and time again. When we imagine, we shift, or we can change what impresses on the subconscious mind. Why? Because it doesn't matter what's happening on the external world. If I can, in my imagination, experience something different, then that must get impressed upon the subconscious mind, and then that must manifest on the screen of space. And here's the amazing thing about that. This screen of space, right, this 3-dimensional world, will come back around and go into our perception. So whether or not, we don't have to keep imagining to maintain these experiences in this world. This feedback loop system is tried, tested, and guaranteed to continuously work. The only thing that can revert back to changes is your own perception. If you're dealing with negative feelings, ideas, or self-image issues, then a lot of times it's not external stuff that's going to fix you, right? And this is something I've dealt a lot with. And so changing beliefs, ideas, perceptions, etc. is actually critical. A lot of times this external stuff is not the answer to internal turmoil. So the first is imagining, right? The second one is sometimes this doesn't work properly, right? For me, even this time, I was struggling to get this to experience these manifestations. And so this is actually very critical. And this is to change environment. So change the environment. How is that? How does that even make sense? So here's a critical aspect, and this is separate from this, right? So imagining a different experience is critical. We can slowly but surely begin to change our experience little by imagining a different thing each day. That manifests. We still imagine a bigger piece of our life changes day after day. But when we change our environment, this is essentially set to get us out of our habits and routines and our manifestation stuck. So as I said before, this becomes a cycle if we keep doing the same thing over and over again. Like, I'll stay in this house, I'll go in this office, I'll work on the computer, I'll read, I'll write, I'll answer emails, I'll do some business stuff, and day after day after day, that hardens rock solid into the handcuffs that I talked about before. So to break out of that temporarily, I have talked to people who were unable to manifest at all. And I mean, that is something that is very difficult to attain. But the one thing that I have seen in common between all of these individuals, which are very few and far in between, is the fact that they never leave their house. They have the same routine over and over and over again. And technically speaking, they are manifesting what they want, but their reality is such a whirlwind of a perpetual feedback loop system that there's no room or space for things to change. But if these individuals, these self-same individuals that I've met, change their environment at all, meaning take a different route to work, or go take a hike. Sometimes I've literally had to leave here and go hike up a mountain for 2 hours, and that's it. But during the time from which I do that, that is when things begin to change. Meaning, I have had it so I've gone out on a hike and my financial manifestations began to happen just simply by going on a hike, right? All of a sudden I see cha-ching, cha-ching on my phone, or the different I'll get the email or the message from different people stating that my manifestations have come to pass. And so just taking a hike or a walk, it doesn't even have to be, you don't have to go on vacation. You don't even have to spend any money. Just walk down a different road. Do something that's going to break you free from the bondage of your mind so it can begin to essentially throw a wrench in the gear of that machine that keeps pushing forward things day after day, minute by minute, hour by hour, but days turn into weeks, turn into months, and turn into years. And so the final thing, and this was kind of the biggest solution, and I'll talk about these two together for me that solved my problem, but it's to change people as well. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean I'm going to go and change you. I don't mean I'm going to change your face. I don't mean I'm going to change your clothes. I don't mean I'm going to make you act a different way. I mean, I'm literally going to take someone who I don't hang out with or whom I haven't seen in a long time, and I'm going to hang out with them. So in the end, it was about 2 months and some of my big manifestations were stuck, and I invited my cousin to come up to hang out with me. So he came here for 3 weeks, and the interesting part was that it was really just a joke. I didn't think he was going to be able to come. It was more just starting a conversation because he's always wanted to come out here. But the instant he came, everything changed. What do I mean by that? The instant he came, my waking up early manifestation happened, and that was completely unrelated to him whatsoever. He sleeps late as well, but nevertheless, I just slowly but surely every single day started waking up an hour earlier until finally I was waking up at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, no pressure. I was waking up earlier than him. On top of that, finally so one of my things that I wanted to do was to eat healthy and exercise. So suddenly someone reached out to me, someone whom I knew was going to watch this video, so thank you, and kind of reminded me to do this exercise that was prepared for me, that she made for me. And not only that, a diet and stuff, but I stuck to it. I had tried many times before in the past few months, like I mentioned, to no avail. So what was different? Nothing. It's not like my cousin was doing these workouts with me. In fact, he didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't care at all. That happened. But the coolest thing that changed was that I hit a financial goal, a massive financial goal that I was essentially just trying to manifest for the sake of manifesting it. That, like, a huge financial goal. Just for him being here, money started pouring in. And so he broke up the environment, and he was a different person, a different character in my life than usual. And so this threw a wrench in the gear, and this whole thing that had been created by me was destroyed, imploded, right? Gone. And so everything began to change. I was honestly a different person by the time he left 3 weeks later. So it's so critical and amazing that literally when you get stuck in a state, if you can't do it, another person can, or just go for a different walk and things will change. It's and it's not only with me. I know just over this past week, I talked to 2 other individuals whom the same exact things were happening to. And here's one last thing that I want to talk about as far as this is concerned, right? So you can get out of any state, and my manifestations began to pour in. I had 5 big manifestations that happened during that 3 weeks that he was here, and then after he left, days with 5 big manifestations, each day after day after day. But here's the thing. If I choose to fall back in my old state, like I can feel the pull from essentially going back to that state that I was in before my cousin came here. It's very important to take the deliberate action and be conscious and cognizant to not fall back into those old states, because it can happen just as easy as it came the time before, because you already have that in momentum somewhere. So it's, for me, I've decided to do a different thing each day, right? One of my friends brought this up to me, a really close friend of mine, And he's doing one different thing every single day for this entire year of 2020. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing as well. And that's what I have been doing as well. And it's been very helpful in keeping my state from building this momentum to essentially turn me back into the handcuffs. So this is always at play: perception, impression, and manifestation. It's always happening. So you're in charge of what comes in, what you imagine, and what manifests out. So start to take control today. If you are feeling like your big manifestations are stuck, if you're feeling like you're in a lull, or like your routine is monogamous, it's a very good indication that you are state stuck. Now, all things are possible, and sometimes we just need a jump start. So imagining changing your environment and changing the people that you're hanging out with can be an easy fix to essentially jump starting and getting your manifestations to pour in to break that down. So anyway, I hope you like this style of video. It's definitely new. It's definitely something that I like going over. So definitely leave your feedback. I really appreciate that. And subscribe if you like this style of broken down manifestation systems in a really laser focused, systematic way. And hit the bell icon if you want more of it. So thank you so much.